Second.
What did he do, Yoakim?
Anybody have anything? You were going to say something about Yoakim yesterday with the skull? No, go ahead.
Yeah. So the Marsha gives interprets the Gemara literally. The two punishments correspond to the two sins that he had done. One of them, he put the shame of what is Zorah, shame Hashem on his Amma. That's what
we mentioned before that
that's
he
what's
put
written on his skull. That same and burnt because he said we don't need Hashem's light. He has the gold. Hashem shows it. The
earlier in the Gemara said that Achaz did those two things. He said we don't need Hashem's light because we have gold, and he said we don't. And he carved Hashem's name on his reproductive organ, and thus he had these two punishments. Okay. Now, literal interpretation I know is there. The question is, what's the deeper spiritual significance here? Anybody?
What would even?
Yeah, they told you
it's really bad news. Yoakim, what would you think like that?
We talked about that before.
He was taken care of because he did something good. Not bad.
Oh, he
gets taken care of. It just he doesn't completely lose his share in the world to come. That's all.
He's still a shareholder. He may be a minor shareholder, but
he's still.
To do a thing like that is really whatever.
We had the Gemara earlier where Menashe told Rav Ashi in a dream. We had the Gemara earlier. Menashe told Rav Ashi halacha that Rav Ashi didn't know, and Rav Ashi asked Menashe in his dream, "So why did you serve Avodah Zarah?" Menashe said, "Trust me, if you were there, you would have been holding up your robe so you can run faster to Avodah Zarah."
That was the times.
That was a taiva. In other words, to some degree, we all do this today. Right? We have our things that we give into, and we don't see it as a contradiction to the fact.
On your,
but you said
we don't feel the whole. Everyone did it.
Hashem took away the taiva.
Yes,
and replaced it with something else.
With money.
Yeah,
that's my reading of it, but it seems pretty obvious.
Or women or whatever.
Yeah, it seems women then existed also, and it was connected to Avodah Zarah.
Always existed. That was always.
They tried to take away the taiva for that. Okay, let's see. Sorry. That's a famous Gemara. We've interpreted it that way, but.
It's the second time I heard about a skull. The other thing about the skull is in
Pirkei Avos, about Pare.
On the water.
Also very perplexing.
So
measure for measure, right?
So,
you drowned in.
We should look at, if I'm not mistaken, there's a talk from there about that. At the skull. Maybe let's look it up there. We'll see. Maybe
my father once gave it over.
So maybe we'll look up there. We'll find out what the skull means. Maybe we can apply it here somehow.
Yeah, maybe.
Right, especially considering that Pirkei Avos is a lesson, it's not history. So what's the lesson in the story? So there has to be something. Let's look. That's a good idea.
Sometimes they're related.
Living by the sword, you die by it. However you treat people, they'll treat you back. I think that was the lesson.
There's a story. We also have in the Gemara here something else related to a skull. No, I'm thinking of Mashiach sitting at the door at the gates of Rome because it's the gates of Yerushalayim. That's something else. Okay. Kuf Daled Amud Aleph 104a. We are. Yeah, the first line of.
The big ones, huh?
Yeah, there's three different size lines, the middle size lines, the fourth word. So if you go all the way to the right side, where the Gemara pops out from under Rashi, protrudes from under Rashi, you'll see Zois va'oid acheres, and the fourth word is Tanya. Rabbi Shimon Lezer says, Bishvil, as a result of that which Chizkiah said, Hatoiv by Necha Asisi. He's talking to Yeshaya, if I'm not mistaken. And he says, no, he's talking to Hashem. Sorry, he's davening to Hashem. He says, the whole verse you can see on the side there is, Ana Hashem, remember me, that which I've done, I did which is righteous before you, wholeheartedly and truthfully, and that which is good in your eyes I did. And so that, the Gemara is kind of reading it as, that's a bit boastful. He's assertively saying to Hashem, I did everything you asked, as opposed to something along the lines of, I hope that my humble service before you is recognized, or something like that. The assertiveness of his statement seems the Gemara is interpreting it as, yeah. It's actually said, B'shvil chizke sheshivachas atzmai. Praising himself. I did everything right. This is when he's davening to Hashem when he got sick. And then he says, likewise, a little further in the same context, a few psukim later. So before he was talking to Hashem, that pasuk. Now in this pasuk, the next one, he's talking to Yeshaya, the prophet, and he says, Ma'ois, what sign will I get that I'm healed? Right, that his prayer is accepted and he's going to get healed. Right, we had this story before, so I was asking earlier what the details were. We had this story earlier where he was sick, and the kings of Babylonia sent a message to him, and they said three things. How are you? First, they wanted to write, how is the king? And Nebuchadnezzar said, first ask how God is doing, how Yerushalayim is doing, then ask how the king is doing. And because of that, Nebuchadnezzar got Kvitz Saderech, he got speedy travel. And that was the time. And the Gemara there says as well that, I was asking you what the details were, but if you remember, please correct me. He said then, what the Gemara says then is that the hours, there were certain hours of the day that belonged to Achaz that were given to Hezekiah, so he had a longer day, thus being able to get healed during this long day. Anybody remember this? Somewhat ring a bell? And Achaz's day was much shorter, it was 2 hours instead of 12 hours, and then 10 hours were given to Hezekiah.
You said because of the sun to heal him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So this is all in that context. And he's talking, first he's davening to Hashem, and there he's being boastful, and there he's being assertive in that I did everything right, and therefore heal me, God. And then here he's talking to the prophet, and he says, what's my sign? As if he deserves one. So, says the Gemara, Ma'ois, he's asking what sign? As if his prayers were for sure accepted, because he's perfect. And therefore he's demanding, what's the sign? Now we have to remember, this is Chizkiah, who the Gemara said could have been Mashiach. And as we discussed, already had the elements of Mashiach within him. Even there, the Gemara is saying that there was some minor fault.
He was missing something. Right?
He didn't sing a praise.
He didn't sing, that's right. He didn't sing, I guess it's kind of connected. He didn't sing the praises, he didn't thank Hashem, acknowledge the miracle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They would connect that to Gemara to the Antebi, and the importance of acknowledging the miracle and thanking Hashem for the miracle. Even though in some communities they didn't want to do that. They were connected to this Gemara of Chizkiah. Anyway, so because of this, because of his assertiveness and his self-assuredness, Nachrim achlu al shulchanai, foreigners ate at his table. Right, as the Gemara is about to go on to say, what happened was when the messengers came from Bavel to see how he was doing, and he was miraculously healed, he invited them all to sit at his table, and he showed them around the house, and he was showing off his kingdom, which is not unusual for those days. It was part of a power play to show your friends / could be adversaries your power and what you have, and to keep them at bay. But he did that, and he did that through foreigners, to these goyim, to these people who came from Bavel.
Trump does that, right?
Okay, we won't even comment on it. We won't even comment on it.
And says the Gemara further. So because he was self-assured, these foreigners sat at his table. And because these foreigners ate at his table, garam galos lebanov. That's what eventually caused the exile of his children. Right, not long after Chizkiah, there's the Babylonian exile imposed by some of the people who came to visit him in that visit. And that's all because he was self-assured. Therefore he had these foreigners, and as a result of that, the foreigners invaded.
Wasn't he showing the temple vessels or something?
The Gemara doesn't tell us exactly what he was showing.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that it includes that list, but I'm not going to say it doesn't. But what's interesting is maybe it means something. His self-assuredness was what led him to. In other words, what should have he done? What was wrong with showing the foreigners come, the foreign dignitaries come? He shouldn't serve them a dinner. Maybe it means something that it indicated that he wasn't fully trusting, or he was self-assured that he can protect the Jewish people, instead of remembering that his source of protection comes from Hashem. And moreover, he was davening to Hashem earlier. So it's not like he didn't have faith in Hashem. Of course he had faith in Hashem. But it was almost as if he felt that I'm deserving of protection. So even though he's relying on Hashem, but he's relying on Hashem's going to give it to him because of course Hashem's going to give it to me. I deserve it. Right? As opposed to his prayer to Hashem being, even if I'm not deserving,
Right.
I hope that my humble service elicits your protection. So the chain of events kind of indicates his being self-assured that he's deserving of this protection from Hashem, and maybe that's what led to the final downfall, to later eventual exile. The Gemara interjects at this point of the story and says, this statement, this teaching we just read from Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, that because of his self-assuredness, he invited foreign dignitaries, and because he invited foreign dignitaries, that led to his children being exiled by those foreign dignitaries. This serves as support to Chizkiah, not the King Hezekiah, but to a Moira, to a scholar of the Gemara's age named Chizkiah. Happened to be the same name, but not the same person. This is thousands of years later.
So he did avoid the Zara after, right? That's what he did.
Chizkiah, no. No. He just was a slow decline to his kingdom, and at the end I think he ended up ruling from partially time from jail, and then the next king was exiled, and then he came back, and then the Jews were all exiled. Right, so missing
A few generations ago, Chizkiah was a success.
a few generations later. No, his
The 10 tribes.
actually his son served idol worship, but many years later, Tzidkiyahu, when the king, by the time Tzidkiyahu came around, there was the exile by the not by the dignitaries, but by their descendants, by Bavel.
There's some story in the Sipur Kasim that he came back in a giggle to knock out the Avodah Zarah to make up for what he did beforehand. That's why I want to know if he did.
Chizkiah, maybe he wasn't successful in it. I don't know. I'm not going to add.
The same,
yeah.
I'll read the story again. I remember.
No, it could be because he didn't fight it enough in the northern kingdom. I don't know. Or maybe he didn't put it out enough in his own kingdom. But he certainly was. Gemara said he was worthy of being Mashiach. Okay, so this idea that inviting foreign dignitaries is what led to the eventual exile of his descendants at the hands of the Babylonians years later. This supports the sage Chizkiah of the Gemara, who spoke 1,000 years later. The Amar which said, Chizkiah said, again, not King Hezekiah, but the Gemara sage Chizkiah.
After the incident?
We are in the Gemara's time. They're analyzing what happened 1,000 years earlier.
Okay.
One of the people analyzing is a fellow named Chizkiah.
Yeah.
Happens to have the same name. And he's making a statement about this thing. And then the story that we just quoted from Shimon ben Elazar supports that statement from Chizkiah. It happens to be the name Chizkiah, but we're talking about a Chizkiah that lived 1,000 years after the original Chizkiah king. I think at least 1,000 years, maybe more. Yeah, a scholar from the Gemara age. We are supposed, as it were, at the Gemara's table in this discussion. So that's where we are, right? And we're analyzing that which happened years earlier.
We're in the Amoraic period now?
We are in the Amoraic period. Whenever the Gemara says we or us, it's the Amoraic period. Analyzing texts from the Mishnaic age, and then farther back, analyzing texts from the biblical era, which is what we're doing now. Okay. So Chizkiah said, in our day, in the Gemara's time, anyone who invites idol worshippers into his home, not just I invite them into the home, but a mashamish and stands to serve them. Again, I think it means not just literally invite them and feed them, but I think it means serving them as in putting your trust in either yourself or in them, as opposed to your trust in Hashem. It's being self-assured, I'm going to play the diplomatic game and I'm going to be okay. Or, which is kind of putting the faith in these idol worshippers. You're saying, if I treat them nicely, they're going to treat me nicely, as opposed to recognizing that protection comes from Hashem. So, but I don't think it means that you're not allowed to feed non-Jews in your home. Like if you're
just had an earlier discussion
about you're supposed to feed people.
They merited the world to come because they
fed people, yeah.
Must be Jews though, those
but nonetheless, I don't think it means that if you're a Jewish king, you're not supposed to invite foreign dignitaries to eat with you. I don't think that's what it means. I think it means
that would seem to be customary.
Seems to be normal.
Yeah. Don't you have to have some kind of relationship?
That's
right. That's what I'm saying, buddy. So I think the problem here is.
There'd be something more.
I think the problem here is putting your faith in these meetings. That's what's going to protect you, as opposed to recognizing that the protection comes from Hashem, and there's just a natural means to which Hashem is going to provide protection. Okay. That's what I'm saying. Mashamish love means like he's doting after them, as if like he's putting too much trust, too much honor in them, too much trust in this meeting.
He shouldn't do it himself. Maybe it means he should have servants do it. He seems actually correct.
It's only according to one opinion later in the Gemara, we'll see. That's why I didn't mention that. Anyway, says the Gemara, Goyim Golos Labanov. This Chizkiah said that this kind of behavior causes future generations to be exiled. And this supports that which we said earlier, that because Chizkiah invited these people into his home and he treated them with such honors and he was self-assured, that caused later generations to be exiled by the Babylonians. So sorry?
Sorry, it was maybe not a formal meeting. It was more of a personal nature. This meeting.
That could be the issue.
The invitation was.
That could be the issue, as in you made it a personal.
So diplomatic.
That's what Rabbi Gimpels is suggesting, and there might be
informal.
As opposed to a diplomatic meeting, this was like a personal relationship, as if like we're buddies here.
More trustworthy.
Trumpian approach.
Yeah, so
which would be in line with what you were saying.
Yeah, that might be right, as we're going to read now in a minute. That might be right. So let's see. So Shenemar, as the verse reads, the pasuk reads, Yeshayahu tells after Chizkiah invited these people in, Yeshayahu asks him, "What did you do?" And Chizkiah tells him what he did, and then Yeshayahu prophesies to him, "This is a spell's trouble." And Yeshayahu says, "And your children that will come from you, Yichu, they shall take you." These dignitaries you just invited, these Babylonians, they shall take you. They shall take your children, and they'll become servants or ministers in the house of Bavel, as opposed to serving your kingdom. They'll serve their kingdom. Okay, so this is end of Chizkiah's statement, proving this idea that a person who invites idol worship and dotes after them, Mishamash puts his trust in them, and as you'll see in a moment, perhaps it means making the relationship very personal as opposed to keeping it professional, if you will. That's what causes his children to be exiled. Now the Gemara gets back to the actual story, describing the meeting of when these people arrived. Namely, Yismach Aleim, right? The verse we read before was Yeshayahu telling Chizkiah what's going to happen, prophesizing what's going to happen to his children as a result of the meeting. Now the Gemara is going back a few verses to describe the actual meeting when these Babylonians came to visit Chizkiah. It says like this: Yismach Aleim Chizkiah, and Chizkiah was very happy to see them. See, I guess there's the problem. Yismach Aleim, they got very happy, as opposed to this is a means that we have to do, but it's Hashem who provides protection, and my hope is in Hashem, not in these meetings. That's why I think that's the problem here, not just the fact that they came. So Yismach Aleim Chizkiah was happy to see them. Vayidim is called base Nechsa, and he showed them, I think it's pronounced the word Nechaisai, and he showed them all the house of his treasury. That's the literal meaning of Nechaisai, but it's a odd term for there are different ways you can say the word treasury, and this is an odd word to say Nechaisai, which is why the Gemara is going to.
Arabic, what is Nechaisai?
I think it's also Lashon HaKodesh, but usually it says Oitzar. Oitzara is usually the common term. So I think the fact that it says Nechaisai as opposed to the usual term, the Gemara is going to interpret that to mean other things as well, as we'll see.
Showing the valued wealth of the.
Sorry?
He's showing the valued wealth of his
kingdom, his home. Yeah.
As
a kesef, as a zav, the silver, the gold, the sapsanim, and the spices, the sashem, and the toiv, and all the good oil.
Fighting jealousy and perhaps.
Maybe. Yeah.
low profile.
So says the Gemara, Amar Rav says, my base in Nechaisai, what does this mean that he showed them the house of his treasury? Using this term, Nechaisai, which is not the usual term, which therefore leaves it for interpretation. So the Gemara now gives three interpretations. One is, Ishtoi Hishkasa Alehem, his wife served them, served them wine, as opposed to his servants, his wife served them wine. And it could be like getting back to Rabbi Gimpel saying what you're saying, Robert, that there's the problem. Made it into a personal thing. Oh, we're friends, we're buddies. Look, my wife is going to serve you wine, which is immodest, and leads to a certain intimacy that was inappropriate.
It would be appropriate. It may not even be appropriate with even close people.
Yeah,
Friends.
Even close friends. Yeah,
It may not be.
especially as a king when you're inviting foreigners.
Right. The king
Right.
in the house.
Yeah. So, and Rashi actually notes that earlier, right? When Rashi says that it caused the exile of the further generations, Rashi quotes the verse Yismach Aleim, he was happy, and then it says that that when Chizkiah said that anybody who when the sage Chizkiah, not the king Chizkiah, said that anybody who invites idol worship and dotes upon them, like Mishamash Alav, and that causes future generations exile, Rashi there notes, what does it mean to dote upon them? It's like having your wife serve them, which lends support to what we're saying here. Okay, so that's one reading. Then when the pasuk says Bein Chaisa, which literally means treasury, but it's using this unusual term, Rav said it means his wife served them. And there lies some of the problem, as we just described. The Shmuel says basic nos of Harlem, and actually just literally means straight, just to show them his treasury. That's just literally what it means. But doesn't say that. Shmuel doesn't say that. Shmuel's saying Shmuel seems to be saying it's by contrast to Rav. Rav saying it means his wife, and Shmuel's saying no, it's not his wife. It means literally his treasury. Rabbi Yochanan says Zin Oichel Zin Herlan. He showed them ammunition that has the power to destroy other ammunition. So usually, at least back in ancient times, ammunition was meant to destroy people, not to destroy actual ammunition. But here he showed them ammunition that destroys other ammunition. This is what the Gemara says.
What is that?
I mean, like iron can
because he's strong.
Sorry?
It's iron that can overcome other iron. Like this.
Yeah, I think it just means like cannons, bolts, or something like that.
Weaponry.
Weaponry, yeah.
Not usual weaponry, which is meant to hurt other people.
Weapon.
Yeah, more powerful. It's not.
Weapons that can destroy other weapons.
Or more importantly, maybe
A ballistic.
Korean missiles.
he's revealing his military secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could be in
Yeah.
a sense.
Showing off
Showing
his
the
military
adversary
power.
his military.
Giving away too much.
I mean, way too
He's
much.
being Putin-esque.
Maybe. Okay. On the discussion of the destruction, the Gemara is now going to get into some interpretation of Eicha, the opening line of Eicha. Eicha, of course, Lamentations, the book written by Yirmiyahu, lamenting the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. We read it every year on the 9th of Av, on Tisha B'Av, when we commemorate that destruction. And the opening of that book, known as Eicha, is Eicha Yashva Bedad. How is it that these people, that the whole, it's a poetic verse, but it basically reads, how is it that it's sitting alone? This city that was massed of people is now like a widow. It was great amongst the nations, a prince amongst the countries, and now it's
right?
now it's vacant. That's the opening words, lamenting Jerusalem that was in its glory and now it fallen to low. But it's a poetic way of saying it. So the Gemara is going to kind of analyze the poetry of it. In other words, as we discussed a number of times, notwithstanding the fact that the simple reading of Psukim might be poetic, but certainly nothing in Torah is just frivolous and everything's precise. And that's what the Gemara is going to do now. So the first word is Eicha Yasher Bedad. How is it that it's sitting alone? Referring to Yerushalayim. Amar Rabbi says, Amar Rabbi in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Why? How is it that Jews were struck by Eicha, by this? How is it? By the state of how? By the state of question, by the state of uncertainty. Right? Eicha, that's the opening words. How is it? As if, lamenting. So why did they get this? So says Rav in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, they transgressed 36 covenants listed in the Torah. The Gemara elsewhere, Rashi notes. Yeah, sorry, 36. No, not Chris. It's not this. 36 violations, of which one is liable for kares, which is excision. The Gemara elsewhere lists what these 36 are, but primarily the main. Sorry.
Eicha is 36.
There you go. The primary here is that the word Eicha, his numerical value is 36. 1 plus 10 plus 20 plus 5.
Which done unintentionally would be a sin offering.
That's
right.
With unintentionally would be a sin offering, yes. But the number 36 is significant. It's just interesting. I'm just going to put this out there. First of all, you have the 36 hidden tzaddikim, number one. And then you have the 36, I think it's 36 hours when the original light shined in the original light, the spiritual original light that Hashem created the first day of creation, shone for 36 hours before Adam was banished from the Garden of Eden. And it's hidden till Mashiach's time. So there's a significance of 36 here. There's 36 positive on the positive end, and here's 36 in the negative, which caused the loss, as it were, of the 36 positive, or the concealment at least of that. Okay. Furthermore, Amr Rabbi Yochanan says, Aleph Beis. Why were the Jews strucken with Aleph Beis? What does this mean, Aleph Beis? If you look at the Megillah, the book of Eicha, there's a number of times where the verses are written as a mnemonic, that's the word, each verse opening up with another letter of the Aleph Beis in order. And the next one is Badad Bagayim or something. I don't remember, but each
Paragraph or pasuk?
each pasuk, each verse opens up first with the Aleph and with the Beis and with the Gimel and the Dalet. It's set up in the Aleph Beis. Throughout Tehillim, throughout the different parts of Scripture, it's not uncommon.
Today's reading of Tehillim.
That's right, Kuf Yates is Aleph Beis. There's a number of places. Asher is Aleph Beis. Missing one letter. Nun. But there's differences. The Gemara discusses it in Brachas, right? We learned about that here. Okay, so why is it that they were struck down with Aleph Beis? Why were they struck with a book of Eicha that goes through Aleph Beis? Because they transgressed the Torah, which is given through the letter Aleph Beis, through the alphabet. So again, you see this, the counter back and forth. 36 positives against 36 negative. The negative Aleph Beis, because they violated the positive Aleph Beis, Torah. The next words in the verse is, Yashu Badad, they sit alone. How is it that the city dwells alone? It used to be in its former glory, and now it sits alone, desolate. Amar Rav said, Amar Bechnan. Amar Akash Baruch Hu says, and here's a beautiful lesson for how Jews should see themselves on the geopolitical stage. God says, Ani Amarti, I said, this is God speaking, Vayishkan Yisrael Betach, the Jews will sit securely, Badad alone, Ein Yaakov, and the eye of Jacob, El Eretz Dagam Vesidesh, of a land of plentiful wheat and crops, Avsham of Yart Futal, and its heavens will drip dew. And for what? So Hashem says, I promise that Jews will be alone, but alone in what way? Alone because they are, head and shoulders above the rest. They sit securely in their land, alone in the sense that they are secure alone, with plentiful blessing. But now, after the destruction and the sins that led to the destruction, Yabodad Meshavam, they're going to be desolate, but this time desolate in a negative sense. And I think this connects back to full circle to what we were talking about earlier. Jews need to remember that they are not part of the people. Right? Haman says it. He's trying to say negative about the Jew, but he says it. But it's the truth about the Jew. There's one people, that are spread about the nations. The dasahem shoyness, and their way of living is different, and they don't do everything the king does. But that's the truth about Yidden. The Jewish people are one singular nation, goyachad ba'aretz, a singular nation that are separate and not part of the family of nations. The Jew is here on a mission. Right? He's here on a mission to bring the Aleph Beis of Torah. He's here on a mission to bring the 36 hours of positive light. So when you're on a mission, you're not part of the place to which you are sent. If you become part of the place to which you are sent, you're part of the problem now, not part of the solution. Right? The world is a world that conceals godliness, and the Jew is on a mission to bring godliness there. As soon as he becomes part of the family of nations, then he's part of the problem that's concealing godliness. And therefore, what happens, says Hashem, you're here on a mission to be separate from the people, but to bring blessing to the world. Right? And then as soon as, getting back to Hezekiah, as soon as you start becoming friends with the nations of the world, as if assuming, we're one of the nations, we're going to be secure like everybody else in the world, because the UN said we're a nation, therefore we're a nation. We're blending in, we're a nation like everybody else. Why are they treating us any different? Why the double standard? The UN declared that Israel is a nation. What do we? As soon as you become like that, then the Jew remains a separate nation. But God forbid in the negative sense, not in the positive sense. Because that's the Jew's destiny. The Jew's destiny is not to be mixed amongst the nations. The Jew's destiny is to be separate, but it's either separate securely because we're sticking to our mission, or separate, God forbid, in the negative sense, because like Hezekiah, because of the mistake the Gemara said earlier about Hezekiah, because he thinks he's one of the nations. Look, he's my friend. The Babylonians are my friends. Look, I'm showing them. My wife is pouring them wine. I'm showing them my treasury. I'm showing them my ammunition. Look, we're okay. And he turns to, even though he believes in Hashem, he turns to Hashem and says, look, I'm doing everything you asked. Of course you're going to protect me. Rather than recognizing that we are above and beyond, and we're not part of this family of nations. We're on a mission to bring godliness to the nations. Remembering that brings ultimate security.
Don't get too close.
In
the world, but above the world. That's right. All right, a wonderful day, everybody.